Today we've got a crazy revenge story involving a stalker. We'll get into that in a bit, but first, you like inflicting pain on a kid but can't handle the pain in return? My parents strongly encouraged us kids to stand up for ourselves. We knew that as long as we were justified, they would always have our backs. No one was off limits. Teachers, administrators, other kids, or, in this case, even an adult acquaintance. My friends were throwing a large house party with over 100 guests consisting of friends and friends of friends. I was 10 at the time and decided that I would play greeter at the door. This one muscular guy arrives who was barely an acquaintance of my parents. I stuck my hand out to shake his hand in welcome, as I was doing with all the newly arrived guests. Apparently, this jerk was the kind of man who thought it was funny to squeeze young boys' hands to the point of pain in some macho dominance display. As soon as the pressure on my hand got to the point of pain, I announced to him, "Hey, you're hurting my hand." Jerk just grinned at me and kept increasing the pressure on my hand. I said again, "You are hurting me." Jerk just chuckled and kept squeezing. Since this guy wasn't listening to my verbal boundary, I realized I had to make it serious. So I swung my leg back and proceeded to give him a very solid kick in the nuts. Clearly this was the right approach, as he immediately let go of my hand while howling in pain. The music was loud, so only people right by the door heard this. My dad just happened to be approaching the front door at this time, and the jerk loudly protested to him, "Dad's name, your son just kicked me in the nuts." Dad looked at me with a question in his eyes. I responded, "He was hurting my hand and wouldn't stop when I asked him to." Dad just nodded to me in approval, gave the jerk a stern look, and then carried on. Jerk looked around and realized that he had no support. He left soon thereafter, and when I saw him again in the future, he was quite respectful of me. The pain and trauma of a kick in the nuts apparently provided him with the motivation to grow as a person. As far as I'm concerned, OP just had to hit the calibration switch. I mean, there's only a few things you can use those things for, and using them to deliver a swift message is a pretty effective one in my book. CJ's Opinion commented, "Yes, you've got balls. That guy doesn't anymore, but you do." Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy crazy stories of traumatizing revenge, it would be amazing if you left a like or left a review if you're listening to my podcast. Our next story is, for the first time in 30 years, I'm getting exactly what I want for Christmas: to be left the heck alone. End-of-year work luncheons can be really hard when you're seated at a table with people who get your sense of humor and know your backstory. And the office gossip who just has to know what you're all talking about decides to interrogate you about your holiday plans. Important information: I have trauma associated with Christmas and have not enjoyed it since I was 13. I was assured by my elders that it gets better when you have kids of your own to celebrate with. In my case, it did not. It got worse, much worse. My mother loved Christmas, and she bullied, manipulated, and gaslit everyone around her for decades. Essentially, from November 1st to December 1st, she would have all of us running around after her, putting up decorations and lights, preparing the window displays, and pulling our hair out when she inevitably changed her mind. By us and we, I mean myself, my 2 adoptive sisters, and my 2 adult children. In the evenings from December 1st to the 23rd, we were bullied into greeting strangers, waving at cars going by, handing out candy canes, etc. to people who came to look at the display. Christmas Eve, she would drive us, me, my 2 children, and herself, around the lights in our town. Something the kids enjoyed while they were in the single digits, but soon grew bored with as preteens. She continued to bully, harass, and gaslight myself and my now adult children about Christmas until last year. We didn't know it at the time, but it would be the last Christmas we had together. She died suddenly in July this year. On to today's luncheon, we were quietly discussing what we were doing for Christmas when Nosy Nelly put her 2 cents in. One table member had extended family traveling from abroad, 2 or 3 others were traveling to see family or friends. Everyone at the table knew not to ask me. Everyone respected the fact that I have trauma, and while I'm okay hearing about their plans, I don't want to discuss my own. Nosy Nelly, on the other hand, just had to ask what plans I had. After the 2nd or 3rd time of her ignoring my "no real plans" response, I had to change my approach. I said, "My plan is to stay home in bed, curled up with my cat and a good book, and ignore the world for the day." Nosy Nelly replied, "You can't do that, it's Christmas. How would your family feel about you ignoring them?" I said, "My kids are right on board with the idea. They even arranged to go out without me having to chase after them. Nosy Nelly replied, "Your parents would be so disappointed. How could you leave them alone on Christmas?" Me, getting increasingly frustrated, both my grandfathers and my father agree, if I don't want to visit, I don't have to. At this point, I could see the pity in my table mate's eyes, and it was starting to feel like I was having a panic attack. I changed tack as she was going on about family values and the meaning of Christmas, and how I should do it for the kids. I responded, "What if I told you that for the very first time in 30 years, I am getting the exact thing I asked for?" Nosy Nelly replied, "You couldn't have asked for the same thing for 30 years?" I said, "I may not have openly asked for it, or put it on my list for Santa, but since 1994, I've only ever wanted one thing for Christmas, and this year I'm finally getting it." Nosy Nelly looked perplexed, saying, "What did you want?" I said, "To be left the heck alone." The look on her face was an impression of the shocked Pikachu meme, complete with hanging jaw. At that point, our dessert course arrived, and I could focus on something far more pleasant. Although I myself do enjoy celebrating, even if it's usually very low-key, I've never understood this expectation that some people put on others that they have to go all out or do something or see people in their lives that that person has no idea the actual relationship between those people about. Most of the time, saying, "Well, think about your parents," might not end up being a disastrous thing to say, but for somebody whose parents you have no idea about, that certainly is a gamble. Gaia0416 commented, "I hope your day is perfectly quiet, pleasantly uneventful, and completely restful." Our next story is, "Coworker thinks she's my mom is dead." This is a bit of a long story that happened several years ago now. I mentioned these events in passing to a friend though, so it's now fresh in my mind again. When I, 38-year-old non-binary, was in my early 30s, I used to work in the office of an apartment complex for university students. Our front office staff had a ridiculous turnover rate, to the point that for over half of my 4 years there, I was the only full-time front staff. Management hired a new full-time person, E. E was a few years younger than me, multilingual, had a degree in hospitality and sales, and had just moved to my state. Two important things about me: my mom had recently passed away, and I am overweight. Part of my job involved lots of lifting and carrying heavy packages up the long, steep hill our complex was situated over. So I'm fairly muscular and rather fit under my extra fluff, which I'm very proud of. By contrast, my mom never got above 110 pounds in her whole life. She meant well, but almost 30 years of her picking at me about my weight had made it a sore subject. Things went well for a while, and then E's obsession with healthy eating started. I mentioned a restaurant, and she pulled up a menu to tell me what to order with a comment about being my mom now. I shut it down and told her about the loss in my family. She brought meals for me and got offended I didn't want them. She saw my soda and told me not to drink those anymore. Not recommended, told. I had a snack, and she opened a bag of trail mix and crossed my desk with it. I saw what was about to happen in slow motion. I flung both hands over my snack to shield my food, and she upended the entire bag onto my plate. I don't like nuts, so I had to throw the whole thing away. I told her several times to stop. She apologized but didn't change the behavior. I involved management, and they said she was just being friendly. This went on for at least 6 months. Then came the final straw. I don't remember what brought it up, but she was talking to a resident, glanced across at me, and chirped, "I'm teaching her to be healthy." Ignore the misgendering, which I also talked to her about repeatedly. I'm non-binary and use they, them. I'm like her mom. I saw red. Usually I would have waited for the resident to leave and addressed her patiently in private again. This time, I couldn't. It was one pick too many, not least of all because she didn't even address the comment to me, but about me to one of our residents. I snapped. I pushed out of my desk and said something to the effect of, "I had a mom, she's dead, and you're not her. Stop trying to act like it." The entire climate of the office changed. E stopped trying to talk to me and eventually quit, which I still feel bad about, but I'm not sure it was out of line. Management froze me out for making the workplace hostile. I quit not long after, and I'm much happier where I am. But it still itches. Should I have just kept my mouth shut? Edit to add, Wow, I didn't expect the massive amount of support I got here and at Entitled People. Thank you so much. This has been bothering me for years. I've never been happier than where I work now, and I still get pings of guilt about how I left and if I ended up screwing them for staffing. When I quit, I didn't even have a new job in hand yet. I'd been interviewing for weeks, but no offers. I finally jumped and turned in my 2 weeks notice. During lunch break of my very last shift, I had a video interview and walked away with a job offer that literally changed my life. Now I just need to let go of that last lingering bit of doubt. Thank you all. So, unfortunately, I could see a situation where OP would get reprimanded for having done this in front of a resident or whatnot, but does anybody out there actually feel like it was unjustified? You're not my mama, and I'm not asking you to be, E. Cosmic Contessa commented, "You did the right thing by sticking up for yourself. I can't imagine the audacity it takes to micromanage any element of anyone else's life, much less a coworker's diet." Weird vibes from E. Our next story is, Girly girls can own and wield chainsaws. I live in the prairies of the Midwest US. Summer 2024, we had a series of bad storms, tornadoes and straight-line winds. One storm in particular was terrifying. There was a lot of tree damage. Our home was largely unscathed, but our neighbors all around us and some friends in our area had a lot of cleanup that needed to happen. Immediately after the storm, my husband and I went out to buy a gas-powered chainsaw. We had to off-road in our SUV to get out and then back into our neighborhood. I was a country girl in my dad's shadow growing up, so I had handled chainsaws before, but never set up my own. With everyone outside in the neighborhood cleaning up, I went a couple of houses up to my wonderful and trusted neighbor and asked questions and got it started. Away we went, getting trees off cars and houses and out of roads. It was really nice seeing everyone work together. When I was done, I put a call out on Facebook and asked if anyone needed help cleaning up. A friend said she did, so I said I would come and bring my chainsaw. There were quite a few people at her home. I brought one of 5 chainsaws. I brought my supplies and set everything down on her deck. I turned away from it to help with an in-progress cleanup because I was there to do any job needed, not just the job that involved me and my new gas-guzzling, tree-chewing love. A man I didn't know arrived, saw my unattended tools, and grabbed my chainsaw and started messing with it. He was hitting all the wrong things to get it started. So I said, "Excuse me, but..." And that was all I got out. He interrupted me and in hardcore mansplainese said, "See, you gotta flip this switch here and then do this and then pull the chain and then hit the throttle and off she goes. But this one isn't starting. You need to be really careful with these things." I smiled and said, "Yes, I know. That chainsaw is mine and actually, you need to release the lock and prime it before it'll start. Let me show you." And started it with one pull of the cord, throttled it a few times and then turned it off and said, "Do you want to try it?" And for the first time, I looked at his face. It has the mixed expression of what in the bizarro chainsaw massacre just happened, and Girly Girl said, "What?" All he responded with was, I said, "If you can safely start it, I don't mind if you use it. There are a lot of jobs that need to be done, so I'm going to go back over here," and set my tool down, locked it in safe mode, and went back to work. He could not get away from me fast enough, and he stayed away from me for the rest of the day. PSA, Girly girls can own and wield chainsaws. Now, I don't know what was actually going through this guy's mind. You can kind of take a guess at it from his expression, but I feel like if I was in that guy's position, and I saw what OP did, I would look like that gif of the Lego movie guy in the tuxedo who's just like absolutely swooning. And leave it to a man to not know what buttons to press and what switches to flip to get it started, if you know what I mean. Our next story is, well, everybody dies. A few years ago, the family gathered at my brother's house for Thanksgiving. Myself, my mother, and her husband came from out of town. Everyone else in the family lived nearby. My sister-in-law's mother was taken to the hospital on Thanksgiving, so my sister-in-law didn't join in the big meal, and the kids spent a lot of the holiday freaking out about their grandmother, the one not my mom. My mother's love language is complaining. She does care, but shows it in the worst ways, but I've trained her to pull me aside to complain about my brother and his family. There are some topics like weight we've all agreed are off limits, but my mother still has something to say. Since my brother got married decades ago, I've worked with my mother to only discuss the off-limit topics with me. This allows her to get to say the things she shouldn't, but to me instead of the target. Usually I can address or dismiss her complaints, but even when all I can do is shrug in agreement, now that she said it, she moves on. And the harmful comment never gets spoken again, and never reaches the person about whom it was said. My mom was complaining to me about my sister-in-law not spending any time with her. I replied, "You know sister-in-law's family wouldn't say a word if you were in the hospital with your son by your side on Thanksgiving. How can you criticize her?" So she moved on to, "Those kids worry too much. Everybody dies, they need to accept that." Then we talked about how those kids and her grandchildren hadn't lost anyone close to them yet, and maybe don't blame them for worrying about a family member so ill they need hospitalization. My sister-in-law spent Black Friday with her mother in the hospital, and that night my mom came to me to complain again. She opened with, "I am not coming back here next year," and went on a tirade that included how her husband's dementia made it difficult for them to travel. She felt unwelcome in her son's house, so we should all come to her for future Thanksgivings. I said, "We don't have to decide anything now. A lot can change. A year from now, you may be able to travel freely." She scowled and explained her husband's dementia was only going to get worse, and I looked into her eyes and said, "Well, everybody dies." Her face changed to a mixture of anger, horror, and good one as she realized how awful it feels when you worry about a loved one's illness and get dismissed with, "Everybody dies." The lesson stuck with her. Overall, she's gotten much better about not criticizing her grandchildren for their feelings, which is why when mom's husband passed, I was on my best behavior and never once reminded her that everybody dies. Plus, she's returned a few times to the same house she swore she would never come back to. I know this is extremely off topic, but I've been watching a lot of House MD lately, and one of the premier catchphrases is "everybody lies." So all throughout this story, every time "everybody dies" comes up, I just had like a mental picture that kept fading in of a brooding house staring at me. "Everybody dies." House photo. Bad Guy Busters 2020 commented, "Reminds me of how my mother complained for years about how my sister-in-law should just get over her dad's death because it happened years ago. Then, when her husband, my stepdad, died, she of course grieved for years. And I reminded her that she thought my sister-in-law should be over it already, and maybe we should let people grieve their own way without judgment. It's sad that some people need to have the exact painful experience to understand how hurtful words are, instead of just having empathy and compassion no matter what." Our next story is, "You had my chart in your hands." My husband and I just had our first ultrasound today. It's early, but so far the baby looks good. We were well known in this part of the doctor's office. We'd been having fertility struggles for almost 3 years, with only one pregnancy that didn't last. This department knew our faces and our struggles well, or so I thought. Usually for any appointment, a nurse will look at our chart, which includes past history, mind you, and do your vitals. Sure enough, right before our appointment, one nurse calls us in and does the usual routine. She's taking my blood pressure when she looks at my chart and asks, "Is this your first pregnancy?" I kinda blinked at her and asked, "What?" Because most nurses could find that from my basic info. Sure enough, the nurse repeated herself, this time with a bigger smile, so I told her, "No, this is my second." I was hoping she would maybe take the hint from my tone, but nope. She then goes, "Aw, and how old is your little one?" I reply, They didn't make it." Finally, the nurse gets it. She takes a double look at my chart, eyes grow wide, then stumbles with her words. "Oh, well, hopefully this one is good news, right?" She laughed nervously. Honestly, this wasn't my first time answering that question, and I'm just numb to it. But I did ham it up a little bit. I started sniffling and wiping my eyes a bit, just enough to where she got the point. She avoided eye contact until she finished her duties. My husband caught on quick to what I was doing and stayed silent until she left. I do feel a little bad for hamming it up, but not enough. Girl, some of your clients are going to come in with fertility issues. Read their charts. I will say, At least it doesn't really seem like the nurse is a bad person. I mean, they hit OP with the, "Aw, how old is the little one?" So, like, obviously they're still seemingly a nice person. I think, unfortunately for OP, they're just kind of the catalyst to make sure that that nurse really does their work before they step into that room. Maybe one of those situations where the nurse was kind of going through the motions, maybe not reading or processing the charts well enough as they should have. I bet after that appointment with OP, for every next patient they had to go see, they did a great job reading that chart. Asset142 commented, "I had something similar happen, but it was at the appointment confirming miscarriage. The doctor leaves after delivering bad news, and I ask the nurse who comes in later for confirmation of some number on my chart for future reference. Nurse is annoyed that I was asking a question or something because she looks at my chart and says, 'Everything looks good with the baby, you're fine.' I said, 'Pretty sure the baby looks dead, and no, I'm not fine.' She got all flustered and made some comment about the wrong chart, and I said, 'My name is at the top. Just say you don't give a crap. It'll be less embarrassing for you in the future.' Then left." Our next story is, I stalked my stalker and he did not like it. Almost 6 years ago, I made one of my obscure art projects temporarily available online. In it, I'm unclothed for a few minutes. Those few minutes sparked a wave of obsession from random dudes online that is still going on to this day. Welcome to the internet as a woman. And the video has been shared on many websites, forums, and subreddits without my consent. I've been able to handle most of it and have the video deleted from most of the places it's been posted on, but there's this one guy who is really obsessed. Not only does he follow my socials, but he also sent me screenshots of me naked in DM with a creepy message, "I have your video and there's nothing you can do about it." Went to great lengths to download the video from the paid DRM protected website I posted it on, shared it, and bragged about it on sketchy forums. Recently, he also started making various montages with my video. What a creative young man! And posting them on random subreddits as well as on his YouTube channel. He even paid an adult content creator to make a custom video in which she reenacted my art scene. What the heck? He also makes memes with my face and posts them around. Overall, not only is he creepy, but he's also just really freaking weird. I messaged him warning him I pressed charges against him, which is true, but you know how slow the justice system is. But it didn't stop him, and he went on making and posting weird content with me in it. He obviously thought I would never find him, which is vastly underestimating me. Turns out I'm much more of a nerd than he seems to think I am, and I have ADHD, so I really don't mind hyper-focusing on really specific things. In this case, finding him. It also turns out he made quite a few mistakes and is, in fact, much more traceable than he thinks he is, especially to someone like me who knows how and where to search and who doesn't mind searching for just as long as I need to. I managed to trace him back to pretty much all the usernames he has online, and finally, to his actual name and his face. I now know who he is, which neighborhood he lives in, approximately how old he is, what he looks like, his IP address, what kind of devices he uses, what video games he plays, but also what his interests are and what kind of adult entertainment he watches. Spoiler alert, not shaming, but weird butt stuff. Turns out this idiot had sent an email to my art business inbox 4 years ago with his full name. I assume he didn't think I would ever connect the dots. He's a rather young dude with a baby face, probably the least menacing face you've ever seen. So it's really funny to look at this guy wanting to act like an internet thug. Honestly, when I saw what he looked like, my first thought was that he needs some good old spanking from his mom to get him back on track. So I gave him a taste of his own medicine. I made a funny meme using his face and I sent it to him. He deleted his account immediately. A 3-year-old Reddit account he used rather regularly. That was yesterday, and I assume he's still busy crapping himself in the fetal position. Needless to say, it was extremely satisfying. Anybody else kind of see the obvious that unfortunately OP maybe didn't? Which is when OP mentioned, I don't know why they're trying to act like an internet thug. I don't think that guy was trying to act like an internet thug. I think he was just saying what he said because, it furthered what his interests are. It was an enjoyable activity for this creepo. Not ever necessarily to flex about anything, just depraved BS. Coco Almonds Rock commented, "Does he still live with mommy? Tell her what he's been doing. Send the receipts and the police report, let her deal with him. Actually, do that whether he lives with her or not. Also, maybe to his employer and his neighbors. Too bad this loser doesn't have an actual human girlfriend you could inform." Our next story is, "Oh, you're back from maternity leave?" Just found this community, so I'm eager to share this interaction I had with a problem customer. I used to work in a big-name thrift and retail store, and I was always at the registers, and I would always have to deal with this lady who was snarky and very entitled about second-hand items and their pricing, which I had nothing to do with. I had been there about 6 or 7 months, and this woman was always a pain in my butt. Like, I would hear boss music in my head whenever I saw her coming to the registers. She never bothered to ask my name or even make small talk with me, so it was getting really annoying, and I was completely burned out from her and other entitled customers, inflicting mental and emotional damage on me. Luckily, I accrued some vacation time, yay, and I spent roughly a week and a half off of work because I timed it up with my days off. Well, I come back completely refreshed and ready to go. I need to add in that at the time, I was roughly around the 170 to 180 pounds mark in terms of my weight, the lowest I'd been in years, still chunky in the stomach area, but I managed to wear it well, or at least I hoped I did. The day I come back, I'm at the register and here comes that lady walking up, and she kind of gives me an indifferent but surprised look. But this time, she actually said something to me first instead of me saying the normal greeting stuff. "Hi, how are you? Is this all?" She says to me, "Oh, I didn't realize you were back so soon from your maternity leave." I'm kinda like, "Huh?" And she goes, "Oh, I thought you took time off to take care of your baby." Mind you, there were no pregnant women working at the time at my job, and hadn't since I'd been hired on. I saw this woman every day for several months, and not once had I mentioned having kids. I don't, or being pregnant. So I kind of laugh it off and say, "I think you may be thinking of someone else." And she replied with, "No, I'm pretty sure it was you. Are you sure?" I laughed it off again and just said, "Nope, not pregnant and never have been. I'm just fat." The silence was so loud. There were a few customers behind her, and I happened to look over at one lady in line, and she looked absolutely gobsmacked but didn't say anything. I finished the lady's items and checked her out, and not once did she say anything to me. Even after I told her to have a good day, I wanted to laugh so dang bad after that interaction, but I waited until I was in the break room and told my coworkers about it. After that lady never made small talk with me again. I hope she learned her lesson about assuming things. One of the dumbest and riskiest things you can do is assuming that anybody is pregnant. It's just not a gamble as a complete stranger that you should ever take. Like, I would love to pose a question to anybody hearing this. Is there a graceful way to ask if somebody is pregnant? Because of that off chance that they're not, and all of a sudden you just look like this huge jerk? Knit Sanity commented, "I learned not to say anything about someone being pregnant until the person told me, or I saw a head emerging. Sigh." Teppers replied, "Excellent life advice. In high school, we had a very pregnant substitute teacher, and I asked when the baby was due. She didn't hear me. In that moment, when she was asking me to repeat myself, my soul left my body. I changed what I was asking her to something else when an assignment was due, because what if I was wrong? It turned out that indeed she was pregnant, but I learned a very valuable life lesson there. I now too never breathe a word until they explicitly tell me or I see a head emerging." Silvaria928 replied, "Yep, one of the most awkward moments I ever witnessed was when I was at a party in my early 20s, and the hostess was an overweight girl, also in her 20s. Someone had brought a friend who didn't know her, and they loudly exclaimed, 'Oh, you're pregnant, when is the baby due?' The silence that fell across the room was beyond awkward. The hostess turned bright red and just quietly said, 'I'm not pregnant.' That was the day I learned to never, ever remark on other people's appearances, period. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy, traumatizing revenge story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.